It is my privilege to host tonight Doug Mclaren, who is a super agent and a super friend, and I'm so happy he's here with us. Let's welcome Doug Mclaren. How are
Hello.
you?
Thanks for having me, Tova.
It's so nice. It's so nice. It's been a while. And I wanted to talk a little bit. Obviously, now you are the co-head of, the directors group at ICM and lots of responsibilities and whatnot. But you started out in financing. So how did you pivot? How and when did you pivot to entertainment business and the agency in particular?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, I went to college thinking I was going to be a banker. It was the 80s, this is what you did. You saw Gordon Gekko and, greed is good. And I don't know, you thought this was Wall Street was the way to go. But when I graduated from college, I went to Hong Kong, worked for a French bank, Credit Lyonnais, it was interesting. It was exciting as a young person living and working in Hong Kong. But I very quickly didn't love the job and didn't love what I was doing. And I think it was the kind of abstract nature of it, the fact that it was very kind of intangible. It was a lot of like, if you trade, a billionth of a cent, 10 billion times, you might make a little bit of money or something like that. So I left there. I went to New York and I started meeting with, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and I think a bunch of different firms. And it was really at that point, this is, a year after college, where I really sort of paused for the first time and sort of thought, well, what do I really want to do? I'm going to trade one city and a job I didn't love for another city and a job I didn't know that I wanted to kind of pursue. And it was the first time I really thought just, how much I loved movies. I loved going to movies. I loved talking about movies. I wrote a lot back then. And, but I didn't know anything about the business. So I just got on a plane to Los Angeles and started meeting with companies who made movies I liked. Back then that was Ridley Scott's company, Jim Cameron's company, and, different sort of, we used to have this thing called the Creative Directory. It was like a book you could buy with all the production companies, and you'd call up the little guy on the totem pole and say, hey, can I come see you? Yeah. But it was after a couple months of doing that somebody took pity on me and suggested that a good way to learn about the business was to work at a talent agency. And I think 2 months of looking, the next day I called this company, Intertalent. They had me in 2 days later and hired me on the spot. And I started, a couple of days after that. So it was sort of, I had no idea what an agent was or a manager or a studio executive, but that was sort of the way in initially.
It's very interesting. When you're in film school, you never really say, oh, I want to be an agent. But then you get a job at an agency and you're hooked, I don't know. It's the action. It's like intermingling with stars. It's, whatever it is, but people really love it. And it's something that they never thought about, especially in a film school. So
well, with a lot of the young people, I think it's a great sort of transitional period. We have a lot of kids who come in and do internships, summer internships. And part of what it is we're representing the talent. So we're working with writers, directors, musicians, authors, playwrights, and we're selling to the buyers. And so you're just in the thick of it. You're right in the middle and you get a real sense of both sides of the business. And as you're kind of trying to figure out and find your way within that business, it's a great kind of catbird place to kind of get an angle on it.
Yeah. But so what is your job? In other words, what do you do all day?
Well, it's interesting. If you're a music agent, you're booking tours, and it's interesting to see how technology has sort of shifted, over the years. We had artists like Beyonce Knowles used to do a, New York, London, Sydney, LA show, 4 shows around the country, and then go and sell 2 million albums. Now, you know, she's on the road, she and Jay-Z, they're on the road for 18 months touring. Like, that's where the business has shifted as it moved away from album sales. You know, the book business, the kind of years of the windowing of a, you know, $24.95 hardcover book where you would have that for 6 months before the paperback, or 2 years before the paperback would come out. Now you're kind of day and date bringing out, you know, the ebook. And so the models have shifted, and that has shifted some of the job description. Some of that is disrupted what we do for the better, and some for the worse. You know, in the film and television business, you know, the job representing writers, representing directors, representing actors, the deals have changed, the buyers have changed, but you know, it's a very similar job to what we've been doing over the last sort of 25, 30 years. On the plus side, I think because of the new models and because of the new players in the business, there's a little bit of a more Wild West on how we can make deals and what we can structure and ways we can put movies together for clients, which I think is pretty exciting. And I think for creators today that I work with in the TV space and film space, it's really a great time. I mean, if you've got something that wants to be, you know, a series of 10-minute, 12-minute, you know, little episodes. I got Michael Sheen did this fantastic thing for the BBC that's hilarious. That was sort of a COVID kind of limited series. They're all 12 minutes long. I mean, they're just great. It's called Staged, and it's really fun. It's on Hulu. But but if you got a 12-minute thing, there's a place for it. If you got a 30-minute, you know, sitcom, you know, I look, you know, it's available. If you've got a 2-hour movie that's a sort of mini that needs to be independently financed, there's a way to do it. If you got a 2-hour movie that needs a $250 million budget, there's a way to do it. 6 hours, 10 hours, you know, 60 hours, you know, 30 hours. So I think there's opportunities to kind of, no matter what the idea is or what the creator's got, there's a way to put it together, and there's a way to find a unique home for it. And that's, sorry. So, I mean, back to your question, you know, I as a, you know, someone on the literary side, you know, we have a big sort of job description. You know, some of my colleagues, it's more of a booking business, you know, I think a little bit on the talent side. You know, you've got an actor and there's these 6 jobs, and you're picking what's the best job and what's the best filmmaker you're putting him in, what's the best role, and when's it going, and is it real, and how much money, and you're kind of, you know, making that deal and off to the races. You know, for my filmmakers and my writers, a lot of the time it's coming to me in a very nascent form. We're working on either finding development money for it, or we're working on developing it, you know, outside the system, and then going and finding producers, maybe a director. Then it's about sort of sustaining, supporting the project when it comes to casting, when it becomes, you know, to the financing, and, you know, all the way through sometimes the distribution and academy campaign, you know, depending on what the product is.
So when I started out, we had 5 studios and 2 independents, okay? And each studio, you know, we're buying like 300 pieces of new material a year. But now I think about the work of an agent when there's like studios, streamers, independent. It's like, how can you cover it all? I mean, what is the system for covering it all? You know?
Well, I've got a really great group of people that we have covering the different studios, the different networks, some of the independent production companies. You know, we have staff meetings right now virtually, you know, several times a week, where we're talking about all kinds of product. Because I think the interesting thing is, for today, you know, representing a movie star, the opportunity may be doing a really great small independent feature that, you know, is $3 to $5 million. We're gonna take to the Cannes Film Festival or Toronto or Sundance, and find, you know, a great sort of distributor like Neon, and, do a sort of really interesting kind of academy campaign around that performance. It may also be going off, and if you're Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon, and saying, we're going to go do a 10-hour limited at HBO, and saying, this is great, worked really well, it's a fantastic piece of programming. You know what, let's do another season. It wasn't sort of planned that way, but we're going to expand it out. They take care of us. It's like we show up for work every day. It's sort of turn on the lights, turn off the lights, you know, and so I think for A+ directors, for A+ talent, for new filmmakers, for people coming into the business, I'm making deals in film, I'm making deals in television, I'm doing limited series, I'm doing ongoing series, I'm doing independent films, and I'm doing, you know, big sort of studio films. So yeah, we need to be, as an agency, with fingers in all those businesses now. And we need to have a real sort of, we need specialists in those areas. You know, I have a great sort of, I have clients working in animation, and I've got a good understanding of those deals, but I've got colleagues who I can turn to who may have a better expertise. You know, I've got, you know, if I'm restructuring or going to the independent market to finance a $2 million movie that's maybe a little bit challenging, I've got a division of people that can work with me and help me sort of find that money for that project. So we've got a lot of great resources to work together.
So it's a community that kind of comes together and help, you know, going. But, you know, before the pandemic, I mean, agent went to lunch every day, got information, covering agent went around to the studios and the streamers and poked around and find out what's going on. How do they get all that info now? Just sitting on Zoom with people? It's very different. When you go to a restaurant at lunch, we used to run into 7 other people, you know, from other places. And they're like, oh, let me call you later. What's happening with this? And now, is it harder?
Well, I think that's a really great point. And, you know, it's interesting, you know, you know, we were talking about this, you know, this week about how we open the office, when we open the office, get people back together. And there's a lot of ways we can do it that are COVID safe, you know, and people in, you know, behind closed doors with a mask on, you know, their assistants aren't there. They're not running into people in the bathrooms and the coffee machine and all that. And we were kind of like, but is that valuable? Like, you know, the whole point of being in the office is exactly what you're describing of, you know, grabbing lunch at the Soho House, and you end up bumping into, you know, 10 other people on your phone sheet, or people you hadn't seen in a while. And, oh, you know, I was just thinking about your client and that script. Right. And, oh, wait, has that come in? And so it's really, but, you know, that kind of conversation at the water cooler often is or bumping into someone at the elevator is often a really great part of the business. So yes, we're kind of, we've lost some of that and some of that kinetic energy and happenstance, but, you know, so we're trying to recreate it. We're trying to kind of make sure we're meeting very frequently, that we're doing it on Zoom. So there is a little bit more dialogue. And what we're finding is that scheduling some of these Zooms with the studios and with the big production companies, and, you know, this big, you know, a financier has just got a deal with Apple or Netflix or Amazon, and let's get them all in a Zoom together and let's talk about what they're looking to do and how they're structured. We're actually doing so much of that sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult to get Peter Chernin and his whole team to drive to Century City and come up and sit with ICM or CAA or William Morris. Maybe you do it once every 2 years. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy for us, you know, Mike DeLuca running MGM now, and hey, you know, let's make Pam Abdi and Mike, and let's all get on the Zoom, you know, once every 2 weeks, and let's chat about what's going on. How do we put this stuff together? How do we move these projects forward? So some of it, the barrier to entry of not having, and I'm sorry for the New Yorkers, but not having to drive east or west of the 405 is an insane advantage here. I mean, it's like, it's heaven not having to do that, you know, to drive to some production company or studio on the other side of the hill or whatever.
And you're tired for the rest of the day.
Oh my God, so much time saving. So I think, you know, there are some of those technical advantages. We're really kind of communicating that way. I think, you know, there's also, you know, the advantage of, I'm up at really early. A lot of the time with my clients in London or Germany or different places in Europe, and late at night I'm sometimes on the phone with my clients in Australia. But without the hour commute to the office, without that structure and the, I'll be up on conference calls at 6:30. I'll do that for a couple hours, and then I can actually sit down and read 200 pages of a book, and actually take that time. That somehow when you're sitting in that office, and I've got young people coming in and asking me questions or help on things, or I've got the phone ringing off the hook, and so and so's on this line and that line and that you can also sort of be really busy, but then you can also just boom, take some time and go deep. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for all of us. I mean, any executive today, any creative person, it's so easy to be on the email, on your text, on, watching TikTok, watching whatever you want, streaming, whatever you can be distracted 24/7. And I think we can be like, oh, I got my hands on everything. I know everything that's going on. But it's like taking time and reading 200, 300 pages of a book and going, you know what? Thematically, narratively, character-wise, this is really rich. This is something I really want to get to this A-plus filmmaker, or I know within this actor's career, this is what's missing. And you can take that time and you're not reading the log line or coverage or the New York Times review only and saying, I don't know, maybe it's good, here, quick, on to the next, So that's some of the advantage.
Yeah. I need a year to read 200 pages, but that's a different thing. So what are the studios looking for? What is Netflix looking for? What is Apple TV looking for? What is the zeitgeist, basically? I shouldn't have used that bigger word. I stumbled.
Well, I'll tell you that, the trend over the last, 5, 10 years, 15 years, really, and some would argue 25 years, but, or since Jaws, but, the studios are, have been shifting. Warner Bros., Paramount, Universal, Sony, the big theatrical distributors have definitely been shifting towards the pre-branded IP, the big comic book, super action, hero movies, stuff that, Harry Potter has sold, 10 million copies or, a billion copies, whatever it is. That shift has been going on for a long time. And part of that is the international value of it, domestic comedies, even political thrillers, some drama doesn't translate sort of internationally as well as, a clear plot of a robot fighting action movie can play around the world. The themes are really clear, if there are any. The plot's pretty clear, and it's very visual, exciting. There's also been this massive growth in theatrical builds. Actually capital investment in giant screen theaters, stuff that we've had here for a while, but are new in a lot of these territories around the world, where you've now got this beautiful theater, air conditioned, giant screen, THX sound, Dolby, blah, blah, blah. And it's a great experience to kind of go to the theater in a lot of these countries. So where we've seen ticket buying sort of plateau, it's really grown internationally. So I'm sorry, that was a little bit more a longer term trend that we've been dealing with. And, for those of us who grew up loving film and we like dramas, we like comedies, we like thrillers, we like, all sorts of things. And I like big movies too. It was starting to get a little frustrating that there was such a narrowing of the kinds of movies that are getting made. I think the hope early days of, Netflix and Amazon and some of the streamers was they don't have to worry so much about that Monday morning box office. They don't have to work, actually forget Monday morning on box office. With the internet, it's sort of by Friday at noon, your movie can be killed. We used to get like a whole weekend and then you were sort of like, now it's sort of like by Friday at noon, the buzz is out there and nobody's going, and massive movies can just crater. But the it was really hurting the diversity, and I think we were hoping that the streamers were going to kind of expand that, and initially they really did, and they could come into the space and sort of say, I'm talking about film specifically right now, but they could come into the space and say, you know, this movie's going to play to women over the age of 45. It's going to play to this, you know, diverse group of people, or this, you know, this certain, you know, gender bias, or this, you know, and we can go make a movie or, you know, a show that kind of really tailors to that group. And if we get 100% of that group of our subscribers, we're good. We don't have to get everybody. We don't have to go global. So I think that was the early day promise of it. And there's some really great moves that have been made. And, you know, if you look at some of the quality of some of the shows that came out early on, there's some great stuff on the series side, and that was really interesting and unique. And, you know, no network could sort of justify what the audience was for Orange is the New Black or Transparent Parent, or, you know, some of these shows coming out initially, the business model sort of wasn't totally clear. These guys could take a chance on, and that was exciting. I would say now, you know, they're making everything. You know, Netflix specifically wants to be a destination that replaces your cable box. You know, they want to be, you get comedies, you get dramas, you get, you know, horror, you get young, you get old, you get, you know, crime series, and you get, you know, serious, you know, documentaries. So they're looking at, you know, they want to be a one-stop shop that you get satisfied of everything. The danger, of course, is all these tech companies, and one of their powers and one of their, you know, great sort of secrets to success is their metrics, is their numbers. I mean, they gather massive amounts of data on us all day long, you know, Google, Facebook, you know, and we talk about a lot, but also these streamers are really kind of, you know, gathering a lot of your data and on what your viewing habits are. You know, my fear as someone who likes to represent artists, and I represent a very diverse group of artists who like working in a lot of different styles and subjects and everything else, is that they start to, from their metrics, get in a little bit of an echo chamber. You know, it's like, oh, people are watching, you know, action comedies. Well, then let's just make more action comedies. And they've got very specific metrics. And you start to kind of feed that. And that was the loop that the studios got in. It's like, all right, IP driven, big blockbuster movies. Let's like, that's what the audience want. We'll just give them that, you know, and you start to cut out a really significant audience. So I mean, that was my concern, but look at it. I mean, look at the diversity of stuff. I mean, I don't know how many people have HBO and watch HBO, but you know, took me a while to watch Issa Rae's show, Insecure. I was watching on a plane. I loved it, you know, and I didn't realize how much I was going to enjoy it, how much it was going to speak to me and the universal themes and everything else. It's inventive, it's funny, it's well crafted, and it was really enjoyable. Michaela Cole's show on HBO.
By the way, she took some courses at the school here.
Oh, did she?
Academy, yeah.
I love that. You know, Michaela Cole's show on HBO, extraordinary. And what it, you know, the difficult of the subject matter, but also the way that she's telling the show, it's just extraordinary. You know, our client Lisa Cholodenko is unbelievable. You know, I thought was a really great limited series that, you know, tackling a tough subject in a way that, you know, an old sort of system really couldn't have probably done as a film or as a limited, you know, series or a TV movie. So I think, you know, there's really exciting stuff that's happening in those spaces.
Amazing. Okay, let's open up to the students. It's for them. I just kind of got excited about all of this. So do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a question from Carlo Fuentes. Carlo, we've enabled you to unmute your microphone. What is your question for Doug?
I think you're still muted, Carlo.
All right, well, that's fine. I will Doug, I'll ask you his question for him. Carlo's asking, is a legal work authorization in the US a prerequisite for talent agency representation? And how can an aspiring immigrant screenwriter land an agent in Hollywood?
It's not a requirement at all. We have a huge roster of international clients. Some of them have transplanted here to the US to find work. Some of them, only come in on a specific project. So they can come in and pitch an idea to, Warner Brothers or to Apple or Netflix and go back to their home territory. And if the show's getting ordered or if they're getting hired, whether they want to provide the services, from their, office in Madrid or Paris or, Hong Kong, they can do so. They can get hired. And if we have a movie or a television show, which they're coming on to direct, at that point, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Netflix will figure out the visa situation. So we have a lot of international clients. You don't have to figure that out first. I think what's helpful, well, pre-COVID, now everybody's Zooming, it makes it a lot easier. Pre-COVID, we used to really like our international clients to be able to come and spend a little bit of time in the US and actually meeting face-to-face. I've got a client who lives in Madrid, putting together a movie of his right now, and just closed a deal for him to direct a pilot here in the US, and he's going to do the kickoff of first 2-episode block of a limited in the UK. All these deals are closed. We've got to figure out with the financing, the casting, the COVID restrictions and where's safe, how we're going to line up and juggle these. And he's got a Spanish movie that is very important to him and passionate about that we've also got to figure out. So we work with a lot of international clients and we just juggle these things. And absolutely, you can pursue work, meaning try and get a writing job, try and get an acting job, try and get a directing job. Once you get that job, then the studio's got to figure out, visa situation and, the other thing that's funny is, of course, given all the tax incentives and soft money, 90% of this stuff is shooting somewhere else. So, I've got clients working in South Africa, London, Toronto, Vancouver, Atlanta. I don't know that I've got anybody working in Los Angeles. Oh, I do have one person working in Los Angeles right now. So, there's you don't have to live here in LA to kind of be working in this business.
I think the second part of his question is like, how can a writer get representation? I think that's what he was asking. Always the hardest thing.
Yeah. So, getting an agent, getting a manager is always a challenging thing. It's a different system if you're an actor. It's a different system if you're a director. It's a different system if you're a writer. The advantage of a writer is you've got something tangible. No one could ever hear about you. No one's ever heard about you. And you can write a movie that is a $250 million budget or a $500,000 budget. It can be a action, horror, comedy, whatever it is, you've got a clean slate and you can get it into somebody's hands. And if they read it and they like it, you're sort of in. It's a little bit more of that catch-22 with the directors and the actors of no one's going to give you the lead of a $250 million movie until you've been in it. It's sort of, building that career. It's a little harder. I think most of the, at least an agency like ICM, most of the actors we're signing off, or most of the directors we're signing, are off of, pretty established movies, and it could be their first film, but it's a first film that's premiering in Toronto or Sundance or Cannes, and that's sort of where we're discovering them, and they may have got 2 movies under their belt or been working for a while and in theater and film and television in the home territory and other spaces. So, but a writer, I had a buddy of mine who I rode with, crew in college. who called me out of the blue and sent me a script. And he called me, oh, I got this script. And I hadn't talked to him in 15 years. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah, okay. It's good to talk to you. And then I said, well, what's it about? And he said, oh, it's about this genocide. And I was like, oh, great. Well, that'll be easy. Everybody will be lining up to buy that one. So it must have sat on my desk probably for about, a month, or a month or two. And I finally picked it up, and it was fantastic. It was the most compelling story. It was a clear character, clear moral tale. It's called Hotel Rwanda. I put a director on it. We put the movie together. 2 years later, we were sitting at the Oscars. It was nominated for Best Screenplay. And this is a first-time writer. No one's ever heard of him. He had worked in radio and as an interviewer. So there's that, opportunity where it can go from 0 to 90. The reverse, I put together this movie, The King's Speech. David Seidler, who wrote that, was in his 80s. And, it was written as a play. But it was a fantastic sort of compelling story and a piece of forgotten history. And, but here was an 80-year-old writer that sort of suddenly is winning the Oscar. So it's really interesting. Screenwriters, not that they have it easier, because it's really hard to write something great. It really is. But as a screenwriter, the trick is just, being dogged about writing good stuff and getting good material and getting in the hands of people and, keep at it. I don't know if that answers the question. I hope so.
We do have a question here from Joe Smith. Joe, we've enabled you to unmute your microphone. What is your question for Doug?
My question is, I was hearing a lot of talk about the concern of talent agencies functioning as production companies. Is that an overall plan of the talent agencies to one day fill that role?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we've made a decision not to get into that business as of yet. 3 of our competitors have, it's a tough thing. The concern, and we had a big conflict with the WGA over the last year and a half, and the root of that, or big part of that, was the affiliate production. The agencies sort of getting into the studio and financing business, and there is a challenge to not have crossed agendas. And for those people, if you're going to option a client's script to your own production company, or if you're making an actor deal for one of your actors to star in a movie that your company is financing, it seems like an inherent conflict of interest, and I think that's, so far we felt that that's problematic. And so we've sort of stayed away from that ourselves. I think, there's a lot of great agents at those agencies. A lot of them I've worked with. A lot of them are incredibly conscientious and thoughtful and ethical. And so, you hope there's not sort of extreme kind of egregious examples of it. But I don't know, Joe. I kind of agree that, it can be somewhat problematic and, needs to be kept, with a real clear eye. Now, a lot of these people, a lot of those talent will have an outside attorney. It's not working for our firm. They're an independent attorney. They're involved in the deal-making process. Some of them have other representatives, whether they're a foreign agent that was in their home territory, or a manager or something like that. So there's other bodies in the mix that hopefully are kind of also sort of voices and keeping the sort of, the system clear. But, a big part of it, frankly, is a reaction by the agencies to the growing sort of, or the shift, I would say, of power to the buyers, over the last 10, 15 years. All these studios have become massive conglomerates. There's a huge amount of vertical integration at these companies. And, a lot of the control used to be in the hands of the talent, and then, which, was really good financially as far as creating ownership structure. If you're a director making a movie, or a writer making a movie, or an actor starring in a movie, if you were making it for an independent financier and you had a real piece of the back end, or if you were making it for a studio and you had real $1 gross, if that movie is massively successful, you're participating in it. And the business model of selling it to TV, selling it to home video, selling it to international, selling, all these kind of buckets, revenue buckets, went into that pot and then could flow out to the talent, and we get paid when they get paid. So it was sort of beneficial for us too. You make a movie now and you sell it to Netflix, they're buying worldwide rights to it in all perpetuity. They want to own it forever, everywhere in the world. And so I think, same with the television business, the classic sort of network model, the licensing agreements, the syndication model, the international, there was a lot of revenue streams if you made MASH, or if you made Friends, or if you made, The Simpsons, or whatever it was. A successful TV series could generate a huge amount of revenue for many, many, many years. If you make that at, Netflix or Hulu or Apple, it's sort of upfront fees. And so I think as those back-end revenue streams disappeared, it's pushed a lot of the studio, or a lot of the agencies, and some of the talent to kind of say, well, how do we kind of regain that? How do we recapture that? And come up with a sort of a new model. So, but thanks, Joe. It's a good question.
We have a question from Thomas from our New York campus. Thomas, we've enabled you to unmute your microphone. What is your question for Doug?
Hi, Doug. Interesting to hear that you spent some time in Hong Kong. That's actually where I was born and brought up. So yeah, I have my question for you. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I can see you again. That's nice. My question is really the age-old question. I'd like to hear from you what you think these days are effective ways for unsigned writers and indie filmmakers to get attention for their original screenplays, be they from agencies or producers, or to get them to the platforms that, like Netflix that you talk about, that offer such opportunity. I think it's, the age-old question of getting it through to the kind of gatekeepers, modest dramas, not blockbusters. Have you got any thoughts on that sort of age-old dilemma?
Yeah, it's an interesting, I get that it's really difficult, and there's a ton of material out there, and getting sort of eyeballs on it's always really hard, and it's competitive. I think I think again with screenwriters and screenplays, and if you're a writer director and you're trying to get your movie made, the material can always speak for itself. And if it's on the page, it's a huge, it's a huge leg up. So, I would say for directors and actors, my advice would be to make stuff, to get out there and make things. I'm probably aging myself, but like a Canon 5D. I had a client who was shooting this music video with Charlize Theron, and they were, losing the light, and they suddenly were like, oh, we want to get this shot. And they just sort of jumped in the front of a truck. There was no rig. There was no additional crew. The director just got down in the wheel well and sort of shot on a Canon 5D, and without it being timed or anything, it was absolutely stunning footage. And, young people have the ability just to go out and make stuff. The editing suites are extraordinary, the visual effects stuff. So I do think as someone who wants to be a filmmaker, and even if it's small, dramatic, emotional moments, comedic moments, human moments, I've seen some of the stuff that people have done, with an iPhone, but even, during COVID in their apartments, locked in, some really, beautiful pieces of filmmaking. And so I think, as an actor you want to be part of that as a director. You want to make stuff, you know, and rather than knocking on the door and saying, let me in. And it's also because, you know, it's hard to make good stuff. So you got to make a bunch of bad stuff first, or mediocre stuff, let's say. On the writing side, you know, it's funny. It's hard. I I remember John Waters at the Spirit Awards years ago. He gets up and the category was Best First Screenplay, right? And there was 5 nominees. And John Waters gets up and he goes, all right, the next category is the Best First Screenplay. And first of all, I just want to say, bullshit. You've all got a drawer of 12 screenplays that were crap that never went, you know, and he just goes on. And there is that element that, you know, you can spend 6 months, 2 years writing something. And I've talked to authors, you know, go watch Masterclass. Margaret Atwood will tell you about that. But it just, you know, great authors have that struggle sometimes. And they go down the road with something and realize it's just not right. It's not good. So it's hard to write good things. And sometimes you got to throw it away and start over again or come up with something new. Or, you know, if you try and get that script out and you're passionate about it, maybe it's not clicking, you know, move on to the next one. Maybe it's something you come back to when your career starts going and revisit again, you know. But without sort of avoiding your question, you know, or trying to get to it a little bit more, I have to say that, you know, the idea, the log line of something, I sit in staff meetings all day long and I get submitted things for filmmakers, you know, some really established A+ filmmakers. And you'd be surprised how we can go through 30 projects that are already at Netflix, already at Apple, already at Warner Brothers, Sony, Paramount, Universal. They went through a bunch of people to get to the agents, and then they went a bunch of studio executives to get set up, and then they went through a bunch of development. And you're just going down these ideas and you're going, really, they're making that? I don't know if that sounds like, and then every once in a while an idea, you know, they pitch an idea or they talk about a script, you go, oh, that sounds great. I mean, that's fantastic. I love that idea. All right, I want to read that. Like, let me take a look at that one. And it doesn't, you know, it's not about a high concept comedy, you know, it's just that, you know, you can pitch it in a way that the character journey or the father and son story, the mother and daughter story, or the, you know, this moment, it's a really small moment that it's going to build through this whole movie to this one climatic twist. And the way you can sort of successfully convey that, I do find, you know, because I do get unsolicited submissions and I have managers calling me or attorneys calling, I just read this. It, you know, sometimes it just, you know, you hear it and you go, oh, that's interesting, you know. And by the way, my Hotel Rwanda sort of example, you know, my pitch for that after I read it, you know, thematically and character-wise and what was going on and the micro story sort of, you know, telling the macro story or how I talked about the King's Speech when I was trying to get the financing together. You know, I think I had a really good story. You know, some people with the King's Speech still felt it was going to be 2 guys sitting in a room talking. And how can you make the third act about a speech climatic? Like, how can you make that feel triumphant? And I don't know. So, you know, you don't always win everybody over, but and even in successful stuff. But I think, you know, try out, you know, on friends, family, peers, people, you know, your ability to talk about your project and whether it's really kind of clicking. And again, you know, sorry, I'm running long in this answer, I think, but different people respond to different things. I have directors where, you know, if you pitch them, it's a world, it's, you know, this, you know, IP, they just turn off. They have no interest. You know, Vince Gilligan, when I call him, it's got to be about character. It's got to be about who's this character, who's Walter White, you know, average school teacher going along, chemistry, oh, I got 6 months to live. I guess I'll just quickly cook, you know, crystal meth, you know, and it's just like, he goes down that journey of, you know, from normal guy just trying to do the right thing for his family to like, you know, drug lord who wants it and does horrible, horrible things. You know, it's like, what did he call it? Like Mr. Chips to the devil or whatever. It's just that journey. But, you know, Vince, it's always character first when I talk to him. You know, I got another client, Neil Blomkamp, who did District 9, and Neil's all about theme. He wants to know what the theme is. What's the idea at the core of it? You know, what's the big idea? And he gets really hooked on that. And if there's an idea he likes, he gets sort of drawn in. And so I think, you know, it's different things for different agents, managers, attorneys, what's going to turn them on. You know, so, but being able to articulate what your movie's about, at the core of it, thematically, character, narratively, you know, that's sort of, that's the key. And I realized I didn't say, here, dial this number to get your script read.
Yeah, but I think that basically you try and make friends with the assistants of the agents and the manager. You know, your peers start start kind of breaking in, and they sometimes take you along and introduce you to their managers. You know, in the film school, you make basically movies with your colleagues, and that's how slowly you break in. Until
Well, Tova, I think it's a really good.
Until after there's 12 and.
You know, listen, Tova answered that question, you know, sort of with a smart thing that I didn't, you know, sort of bring up, which is really don't underestimate assistants. You know, I remember kind of when I was trying to get a job initially, I would call and, you know, what's this about? It's like, oh, just have them call me back. And I just wanted to get to the executive. And the assistants in Hollywood, whether they're working at Warner Brothers, NBC, CAA, ICM, you know, they all want to be, you know, producers, executives, agents. They all want to kind of they want to run studios, they want to run networks, they are looking to be directors, whatever they're looking to do in Hollywood. They're a very ambitious group of people, and they're interested. And if you can get an assistant to read it, don't underestimate the power. My assistant all the time is coming to me with stuff and sort of, you know, saying, I you know, this one was not good, but this one was kind of interesting. You should try and take a look at it, you know? And so absolutely, do not underestimate the assistants. Just get somebody to read it.
We have a question from Devin Ford. Devin, we've enabled you to unmute your microphone. What is your question for Doug?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, cool. Nice. Okay, so my question is, it kind of piggybacks off 2 questions ago from Joe. So once you actually do get a production company behind you, what is the process after when selling a TV show?
So it depends on whether you're writing, if you're going out with a, you know, spec screenplay, like you've written the television show, or whether you're going out with a pitch. And it depends on your experience in the TV world, and, you know, whether this is going to be a half-hour show, it's going to be an hour drama, is it going to run for, you know, is this a limited series, sort of 6 episodes, 10 episodes, or is it something that's supposed to run for 6 or 7 years? A lot of the stuff that's sort of ongoing series, it's a very difficult thing to do. And there are a lot of great feature writers who can kind of write and craft a 2-hour sort of journey, very complete. It's a hard thing to do, but they can write that well. The idea of writing something that then is got to be sort of satisfying within a 42-minute, 60-minute sort of block, and then satisfying over that 10-hour, 13-hour season, or 22 if you're, you know, doing the network stuff, and then have it go for 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. It's a very, very difficult thing to kind of understand that architecture. So it's rare that first-time writers or newer writers, even people who've written a couple of features or maybe been on, what they'll try and do is try and get an established showrunner to kind of partner with you. So, you know, Sam Esmail, who created Mr. Robot, you know, that was an original spec of his. It was a really smart idea, great piece of writing. The first season of that show, they brought in a very established showrunner to work with Sam. He was a great showrunner. He was very collaborative, really kind of worked with Sam, included him. By the end of season 1, Sam was like, I got it, take the training wheels off. it's mine. I'm moving forward. And I think, but I think so early on, if you're going to walk into, Netflix or Apple or Amazon and say, listen, I've got this great show, here's the idea, and we think it could run for 7 years, and they don't know who you are, even if they're reading that first hour, or even if they're, looking at that, pitch, and they really like it, I think they're going to it's sort of like, who's the support, who's the infrastructure, producerally, writer-wise, non-writing executive producer that can help sort of ensure that this kind of succeeds over one season and hopefully for 5 or 6. So a lot of it is about finding the right kind of partners. And then for you as a writer, you want someone who kind of, if you're doing something that's really unique and has a voice, and you're trying to find partners who get that voice. You don't want to be put together with someone. It's like, oh, well, his show's #1 on, ABC. And you're like, I hate that show. It's like the antithesis of what I want mine to be. It's making sure you're finding that kind of right partnership to help sort of guide you through. And then it's different, depending where you are in your career. But you'd be surprised. We have packages that go out where they've developed the script, they've developed the first 2-3 hours of the project. They've put on major actors, movie stars even, and they've gone to the marketplace and gotten passed on. And just tonally, it's not what they want. Competitively, they got similar development. They don't believe they can run beyond a single season. So, it's really, for all the great stories of, a Phoebe Waller-Bridge or Michaela Cole, and there's a lot of really talented people whose shows didn't get sold, let alone, get on air and sort of succeed. I hope that's helpful.
We have another question from Joe, actually. Joe, we've enabled you to unmute yourself again. What is your question for Doug?
Yes, Doug, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I've been reading a lot about the apocalypse of the theaters and will they survive COVID or not? And so my question is, what do you think is going to happen with that? And if the theaters went away, what does that mean for the industry? And how does that affect, how you do your job and so forth and so on?
Well, thanks, Joe. It's obviously a very hot topic. There's some very smart people on both sides who feel really strongly about this. As a movie goer and someone who grew up, I love the experience of sitting in a dark theater and the lights going down, whether I'm by myself in that theater or there's a bunch of people, I don't know, but I love going to the movies, so I hope that experience sticks around, and I've sort of indoctrined my, kids into it, and they love it too. And it's something we really appreciate. But I think, the reality is, for a long time now, that movie-going experience has been working for a certain kind of movie. And mostly it's been the big event movies where there's either an opening weekend sort of must-see aspect where I've got to go see the Chris Nolan movie, or I've got to go see the next installment of, the Avengers movie, or whatever it is that you're going to definitely show up opening weekend, right? And if someone said, oh, you can have it on your phone, you'd be like, I'm going to the theater. I want the energy and the excitement and that scope and all that. The other thing is, it's a very emotional experience. Being in a comedy with a room full of people where everybody's roaring with laughter, where it's a group experience in a comedy is really exciting. Being a young person, a 13 or 16-year-old, and you're going to the movies with your boyfriend or girlfriend and watching a horror movie on a Friday night, and everybody's screaming and laughing and jumping in each other's lap. It's a fun experience. And I think those movies that still sort of have that very strong kind of emotional reaction, visceral reaction, comedies, thrillers, horror, big event movies, I think there's still a place within that kind of theatrical business, theatrical market. I think the smaller dramas, it's just very difficult. Already we've just had such downward pressure on the budgets to make them financially viable. And I still want to go to the ArcLight or go to the, my local theater and watch those movies there. But there's a lot of people where the barrier to entry to get off the couch, to get the babysitter, to go to the theater, to get paid the parking and that, they're happy to watch it at home, and the competition is incredible. It's like you want someone to go and drive across town and try and get parking and get tickets and pay money and and do all this stuff, or they can stay home and watch the new season of The Crown, or they can watch Queen's Gambit, or they can watch there's really fantastic, great adult programming on all the networks, on all the streamers, and all the so there's a lot out there. Besides, every great movie of all time is now available a click away or something. So it's very competitive and it's very difficult. So unfortunately, I'm not overly optimistic. And I was talking to a tech reporter last night, and she said, she was brutal. She was like, it's over. Like, AMC dead, Edward Cinemas dead. Like she was just like, it's all over. Like, I don't know, that business is just gone, and Hollywood won't admit it. Like, it's over. It's all about streaming.
Who was that?
Now I feel bad saying I didn't.
No, not the name.
Oh,
who was it in the industry? In what area?
Oh, she's a tech reporter.
Reporter.
Tech reporter. Sorry, New York Times. Vanity Fair.
Okay.
But she was very strongly like, it's all about the streamers. It's all about the ability to stream and people to. I hope there's still a place for film and in the theaters, and I hope it's there forever. Whether it becomes more of a niche or boutique thing, the way the symphony and the opera, and it becomes a more sort of specialty sort of audience, there is a chance of that. And I think the other thing this tech reporter was very sort of aggressive about is so much of the success of the tech business is about innovation. And the experience of going to the movies, other than maybe some more comfortable seats that maybe recline a little bit, has been pretty similar. That the food hasn't gotten any better really. And, the picture has gotten a little bit better, and the sound's got a little bit better. And so I think, the theatrical experience hasn't wildly innovated over the last, 50 years, 100 years, or whatever it is. So I think, I don't know what those innovations would be, but I think that's one of the criticisms. I was hopeful that because Jeff Bezos or Netflix or somebody could buy, a dozen of these theater chains, without blinking. Apple could, I was hoping that maybe there'd be an integrated model. Amazon can go buy AMC, and with your Amazon Prime subscription, it's like, if you want to watch it at home on your couch, you can. But if you go to the theater and you scan your Amazon Prime or your Netflix subscription app and you get into the, and that it was, multi-platform sort of provided. I think we'll see. I think the windowing is definitely, coming down. Universal successfully argued that, 31-day window recently. I think that'll change. So I don't want to be, but here's the takeaway on the bottom line though, is creatives will be fine. Like the demand for high quality content has never been higher. And if you're a quality creator of content, it's a great time for you, and whether people watch it on their phone or their iPad or at home on their television or in, the local strip mall, doesn't matter. They're going to consume it, and they're consuming it like faster and more robustly than ever before. So as a creator, definitely in our agency, we represent phenomenal creators. We think we're in a good spot, it's a great time. So whoever wins, theaters, film, streaming, television, but people want to go watch great content.
So it's good for us, the artists.
Yeah. And good for the young people who are looking for a future in creating great content. Like there's a place for it. There absolutely is.
Even the 12 minutes, I'm surprised. How can they fit it in Hulu, let's say, the 12 minutes of Michael? How do they do that?
Well, I mean, again, like, that's the other thing is getting away from, the 30-minute model and the hour block. I mean, they really were built around advertising, and even the 2-hour theatrical movie was about how many screens can we get in a day, if people are delivering 3 or 4 hour movies. But I think the consumer viewing habits, and this is one I thought was sort of one of the real misconceptions of a company like Quibi. I mean, I think the viewing habits have actually gotten longer, not shorter. Like, my kids will sit there and watch, TikTok, but and short things, but they'll actually watch TikTok for like 10 minutes, so I don't know how many TikToks that is in 10 minutes, a lot. And when people sit down to watch The Crown, they barely watch an hour. They usually watch 3 hours, or if they watch, The Office, they'll watch like, 2.5 hours of The Office in half-hour blocks. So I think, this idea that we're kind of relegated to 30 1-hour, 2-hour blocks, is antiquated. And I think, a lot of filmmakers will start playing with that. And because of the streaming space, I think we'll see that ability, the flexibility, and, I don't know, 6 20-minute seasons, or 4-hour movies, or whatever it is. So I think that's an exciting, time.
I have a very quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have to go with a package to go through the noise to be noticed? Yeah. Rather than just submit a script. Is it better to go?
Do you have to package?
If you go for the package,
I mean, on the
script.
It depends on the kind of movie. And Netflix right now has had some great success number-wise with action comedies. If you got an action comedy, an old spec, they're looking at it. They're ready to look at it. You don't have to have Charlize Theron attached to star in it. If I'm trying to get together a really thoughtful, dramatic, movie, and even with an A+ director, I might say, you know what? Let's take a beat. Let's go get, this actor. Let's go get, this actor and this actress in this role. Let's go get a budget done. Let's kind of put some real thought into where we're going to shoot this, how we're going to shoot this. And then let's walk into that studio and say, we need 25 million, we need 55 million, whatever it is. And here's your star, and here's your cast, and here's this script that's ready to shoot. And so I think it depends on the challenge of the material. In general, I would say, yeah, we're sort of taking stuff a little bit further down, the road than we used to before sort of exposing it to, studios or financiers.
Doug, thank you so much for coming and really giving us a window of what's happening right now in the industry, because we are just sitting behind Zoom and know nothing. And I think you illuminated a lot of, what's going on and what's current and how the system works and what an agent does. And I think it was a very, very valuable lesson to the students. And even I learned a thing or two after 40 years. So again, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody of taking the time, and all the best and happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for giving me the time. And Tova, it's great seeing you. And good luck to everybody. Just keep making stuff, writing stuff. I think it's a really exciting time in the business. So good luck with it all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.